see too much about why this movie got made, but it really was in peak Western and right in the heart of the sword and sandals, biblical epic, Roman epics. You had movies like Quo Vadis come out at about this time, the Ten Commandments, all those big ones. And it seemed like it fits naturally into those really over the top, stilted acted movies that were just really big productions, like you said, with thousands of horses running through the fields and these, really big landscapes, that it fits really well into what Hollywood was doing in the mid 1950s.
Yeah. And that's something that almost works to its advantage had it been done well. Like at this time when you have the era of the movie star, where sometimes these people, they're not so much characters, but they're archetypes. And when you have these wide angle shots and these people who, like with John Wayne, sometimes when he's monologuing, it's like he's speaking with destiny itself. So it could have been done well in this sense. I mean, I imagine a movie on Genghis Khan being made in 2019. It'd be, I don't know, have to be done like a subversive or an ironic version where Genghis is Will Ferrell and it's a stupid, ridiculous comedy. Or like a Channing Tatum where it's like a mock of 21 Jump Street where it's making fun of it, but it's completely anachronistic. I'm just trying to imagine like how the ways we would make it terrible today, the way they made it terrible in the 1950s, just to give the 1950s its due.
Or just utterly blood soaked with no plot whatsoever, but just one gruesome, gory scene after another, and maybe a Game of Thrones type sense.
Yeah, I think Netflix had they tried to launch a series called Marco Polo, but make it very violent with nudity, like Game of Thrones. I never watched it. I guess I should. I'd be curious. So maybe going in that type of way to really kind of get the scope of Genghis Khan and the Mongolian Empire. One little fact I want to mention before some thoughts on how to make it good. I was talking about how there's no archery, and that's a big problem for me. I just wanted to mention a little bit about Mongolian archery because these are one of the main factors that allow it to conquer so well. The other thing, too, is that with traveling with a horse does a lot of things on the steppe. It's your transportation. If you're very thirsty and dying of thirst, you can nick it for some blood to drink. If you're in a large company of Mongols, which they did travel in, one died, hey, you can feast on horse meat. So you wouldn't just travel with one horse. You would have 3 or 4 as remounts, and they would pasture there. So a horse does a lot of things. And one way that Mongolians were so effective is that they had a technique for shooting called the Mongolian release, where if you're right-handed, you keep the bow and you're left-handed. You push the bow forward as the right arm pulls the string back. So when it's fully extended, you're holding the string on the pad of your thumb and the finger curls around it for support. You couldn't hold 160 pounds comfortably, so Mongolian archers had a thumb ring to protect the thumb's pad from damage. And that's what made their compound recurve bow so strong. And they'd also have different bows for different purposes. You would have... you're going to love this, Steve. They actually sometimes carried incendiary arrows or burning arrows to.
Oh, nice!
Because every army in history always has those, right? They're always. We'll talk about that more in our next episode, but I have a couple thoughts on how to make this movie good. But how would you make this movie better?
I think to make it better, you'd really have to. Try and get a couple of Mongol actors in there. Like, I think it is culturally insensitive. Let's not mince words here in 2019 to have people in Fu Manchu mustaches. And I think you needed something like that to make that aspect a little bit more authentic. But I really do think like adding bows in there. I think that would be the thing that in Mongolian combat, if you picture it in your mind, is thousands of arrows being fired by people, going full tilt on horses. That's what you want to see.
Hey everyone, Scott here. one more brief word from our sponsors. Yeah, exactly. I think it just in terms of if they could have a military advisor to help with some of those things instead of just a bunch of guys on horses running and slapping each other. Although in The Conqueror, horses are falling down constantly, and I guess you can train a horse for that. I remember in Blazing Saddles where Mongo punches a horse and it falls down. So I guess that's something you can do. I don't know if animal cruelty laws would preclude doing things like that in film, but they did in spades back in the 1950s.
Yeah, they sure did.
So I had a couple ideas about how to make it better. This first one is just from a filmmaking standpoint, not from a historical. If you had an English cast instead of Americans, English actors are trained in Shakespeare, so they know how to bring emotion to really weird, not weird, but archaic language. So they could probably handle this weird script better than John Wayne could, although anyone could. But a movie I want to recommend that's awesome, I would say actually does Genghis right. And there was a 2007 movie called Mongol, The Rise of Genghis Khan. Have you ever heard of this film?
No.
Okay, yeah, this is an oddity. It didn't get much play in the United States, but the history of this movie is that in Kazakhstan, after Borat came out, Kazakhstan was tired of being internationally associated with Borat. I can't blame them. So the government started an industry called Kazakh Film to give millions of dollars to develop movies in Kazakhstan. And there's about $20 million that was spent to create this film about Genghis Khan. He's not Kazakh, but the Kazakhs sort of claimed him as a son of the Central Asian steppe. This movie is awesome. It is violent like 300. It was made shortly after that. And it's not completely historically accurate in a lot of things, but I would say it really sets the tone of the solitude on the steppe and the brutality. People are drinking horse milk all over the place. It shows Genghis's young betrothal, and then he's sent into exile, the conflict with his brother. It doesn't shy away from the brutality on the steppe, but it also shows how somebody would actually negotiate politics at that point. And if you take in a highly intelligent person, but you put him in the deep past, make him illiterate, what would that look like? So the quotation used at the beginning of the film, it's an actual Mongolian proverb that says, "Do not scorn a weak cub. He may become the brutal tiger." Just watch that movie. It is definitely, it's good as dumb fun. If you actually want to pay close attention to what's going on there, then it works as history as well. So yeah, I recommend that. And I found out when I was looking for The Conqueror that there was another movie called Genghis Khan, just called Genghis Khan, that came out in 1965 with Omar Sharif from Lawrence of Arabia in the starring role. So I guess that's a little bit closer to being accurate. He's Middle Eastern, still not Mongolian, but I guess that's closer geographically. So that's a little better, right?
Yeah, a little.
I mean, it can't get worse. So
no,
it's not possibly. So yeah, Steve, any other thoughts on The Conqueror?
No, I think, with this movie, you could certainly beat a dead horse with it.
Yes, horse buns. So
I think if that's a place to stop it.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing too. I will say that, like, telling the whole story of the Mongols, this could lend itself to a Netflix series with an enormous production budget. Start with Genghis's early rise, but then when you have sequels where they're conquering foreign lands, you could see Kievan Rus when they go to Russia, when they go to Khwarezmia, which is around Persia, when generations later they conquer the Abbasid Caliphate, when the Mongols go all the way to the plains of Hungary and they're fighting Teutonic Knights. I mean, the possibilities are endless. So, but yeah, Hollywood, if you're listening, call us up. But
yeah,
all right.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get producer credits. Well, we have beaten the figurative dead horse to death. I agree. So yeah, thanks for listening. And in the next episode, we're going to see the historical train wreck, The Scarlet Letter, starring Demi Moore. See you then. So that is the episode for today. As always, I want to thank the Knowlton's Rangers, especially our spy masters, Bill Ivey, Joyce Normant, Tyler from Colorado, Josh Reddick, Baron Fraser, Chris from Maine, Carl from Norway, Moondoggy from Ohio, Rick Knowlton, Vic and Irene, Mike from New York, Michelle, and Marlene. I'll explain what that is in a second. If you like the show and want to help it grow, there are 4 easy ways for you to do it. 1, like and subscribe to the show on the podcast player of your choice. This helps spread the word about the show. 2, join our Facebook group. Here we can keep the discussion going about new episodes, and you can talk about what you like and didn't like. And you can find this group if you just search for History Unplugged on Facebook. 3, we have an online store with t-shirts, phone covers, and other accessories featuring awesomely bad history puns that were crowdsourced by you, the audience. And you can find that if you go to public.com and look for History Unplugged, or you just go to historyonthenet.com and look for our store there. 4, and this is really the best way to dive deep with History Unplugged, and that's to become one of the Knowlton's Rangers. If you know your American history, you know the Knowlton's Rangers were an elite spy and reconnaissance group in the American Revolutionary War, but it's also the name of the membership program of History Unplugged. You can join at 3 levels. If you join at the level of Scout, you can hear all the episodes of History Unplugged completely ad-free and get early access to new episodes, at least a week early. If you join at the Intelligence Officer level, you get special bonus episodes, like a 10-part series on the World War II hero Audie Murphy, a multi-part series called Ottoman Lives about different people in the Ottoman Empire, and a series called Rendezvous with Death that looks at biographical profiles of Americans who went to fight in World War I before America entered the war. The last level is Spy Master, where you get all that stuff, but you also get 3 hardcover history books, Forging a President, How the Wild West Created Teddy Roosevelt, Race to the Top of the World, Richard Byrd and the First Flight to the North Pole, and The Last Fighter Pilot, the true story of the final combat mission of World War II. Another bonus is, you can choose a history topic for me to focus on for an entire episode that can go up to an hour, and I'll answer whatever question you have for me, and you get a shout out at the end of each episode. If you want to learn how to become a member of the Knowlton's Rangers, go to patreon.com/unplugged. That's patreon.com/unplugged. All right, well, that is all for my spiel. Thanks for listening to the History Unplugged podcast, from ancient Greece to the Cold War and everything else in between. See you next time.